Tonight, the latest developments demand your full attention, and once you hear this, you'll understand why. We're witnessing what many are calling the most dramatic unraveling of a royal exit in modern history. Prince Harry, the man who once walked alongside world leaders and commanded respect as a senior royal, now finds himself in a situation that few could have predicted. The revelations coming out are not just shocking, they're painting a picture of a life that's spiraled into something entirely different from what was promised. Before we dive deeper into this, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now. Seriously, over half of you watching haven't subscribed yet, and it's completely free. While you're at it, smash that like button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. And here's something I really want to know. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you think Harry regrets his decision to leave the royal family? I'm genuinely curious what you think about all of this. Now let's get into what's happening. A bombshell report has just been published, and it's sending shockwaves through royal circles and beyond. According to this explosive exposé, Prince Harry has become what insiders are calling a kept man, a glorified house husband who rarely leaves his Montecito home. Think about that for a second. This is the same prince who served his country, who flew helicopters in Afghanistan, who founded the Invictus Games, and now, sources close to the situation say he's essentially confined to his mansion, living a life that's a far cry from the freedom and independence he claimed to be seeking. The report doesn't hold back. It describes Harry as someone who lacks a stable income stream and has no clear mission or purpose. Even more striking, people allegedly in his circle are questioning whether he simply slipped back into the role he desperately wanted to escape, the spare. Except this time, it's not about being spare to Prince William. He's become the spare to his own wife. Let me repeat that because it's crucial to understanding what's happening here. Harry spent years resenting his position as the spare heir. He wrote an entire memoir called Spare, detailing how much he hated that role. And yet, here we are, watching him fall into an eerily similar pattern, just with different players. The sources paint a picture of a man who has lost his way. One insider said it plainly. Harry's not really doing anything in America. It seems he is still very wrapped up in the past. That's devastating when you think about it. Here's someone who had everything: royal status, military respect, charitable impact, and he walked away from it all for what? To sit in a mansion in California with apparently no direction? Now let's talk about the financial situation, because this is where things get really interesting. Yes, Harry made a reported $27 million from his memoir Spare. That sounds like a fortune, right? But here's the reality check. The cost of maintaining their California lifestyle is described as insanely high. We're talking about $2 to $3 million annually just for security. Then there's the monthly payments on a $10 million mortgage. Add to that the costs of running a massive estate, staff salaries, and all the other expenses that come with trying to maintain an A-list Hollywood lifestyle. Sources are now saying that the Sussex coffers are rapidly depleting. The couple has apparently had to downsize their staffing. Think about what that means. When you're cutting staff, it's usually a sign that the money isn't flowing the way it once was. And the thing is, their income streams keep drying up. Remember the Spotify deal? Gone. The Netflix lifestyle show that everyone was talking about ended before it even really began, following the same path as their Spotify venture. The Polo show they produced for Netflix, it lasted exactly one season. There were rumors about Harry filming a documentary in Africa for Netflix, but apparently that came to nothing. Their production company, Archwell Productions, does still have a film adaptation in the works, but that's about it. One source put it bluntly, I think Harry's banking on speaking engagements for income right now. Speaking engagements. Let that sink in. A prince of the British royal family, someone who had financial security for life if he'd stayed within the institution, is now relying on speaking gigs to pay the bills. And maybe that explains why we saw him recently at an event with real estate agents in Canada. When you need the money, you take the bookings you can get. But here's what I find particularly telling. For the first time since they got together, Harry and Meghan are on different professional paths. Remember when they used to talk about being salt and pepper, always together, working side by side? They made a big deal about how they loved sitting next to each other all day while they worked. Well, apparently that's over. The report confirms they now have separate offices. Separate offices, that's a significant shift, and it tells us something about the state of their partnership, at least professionally. All those joint deals with Spotify and Netflix, those were when they were a package deal. Now they're operating independently, and frankly, neither seems to be doing particularly well. Meghan still has representation with WME, one of the top agencies in Hollywood, and she's managed to maintain some connections with powerful people. She's apparently close with former Paramount CEO Brian Robbins and his wife. She's neighbors with Oprah Winfrey, and she counts makeup millionaire Victoria Jackson as a close friend. But what about Harry? Who are his friends in this new life? This is where it gets even sadder. According to the report, Harry's local friends are mainly people he knows through Meghan. The only exception mentioned is an Argentinian polo star named Nacho Figueras, who he's been spotted with at the Santa Barbara Polo and Racket Club. But his UK friends, those relationships from his old life? Sources say he lost touch with them years ago. Imagine that. You move to a new country, and the only real friend you have is someone connected to your sport. Everyone else? They're your wife's friends, your wife's connections, your wife's network. That's an incredibly isolated position to be in. One source described it this way: I don't think they leave the house much. Meghan does maybe, but not so much Harry. So what does Harry do with his time? Apparently, he's mainly found hanging out with his kids, Archie and Lilibet, who attend local schools. Now, being present for your children is important, don't get me wrong, but for someone who once had a global platform, who once made a real difference through initiatives like Invictus Games, to be reduced to essentially being a stay-at-home dad with no other meaningful work, that's got to be difficult to accept, and the local community hasn't exactly embraced them with open arms. One Montecito resident, Gail Pollard, didn't mince words when she spoke to the press. She said Harry probably came to California with a lot of enthusiasm, but a lot of it fell flat. She even said she'd like to see him go back to England, and that was the feeling in their small community. Then she added something really harsh. I don't care for either of them. They're not sincere. They're doing everything for fame and fortune. That's coming from someone who lives in their community. When your neighbors are publicly saying they don't believe you're sincere, that's a problem. It suggests that whatever image Harry and Meghan are trying to project isn't matching up with how they actually live or interact with people. Now, according to those who know Harry well, he's aware he made a terrible mistake. One biographer who studied his life extensively believes Harry realizes the error of his judgment, but he's trapped. Why? Because he can't go back to his family and say, look, I made a terrible mistake. Please forgive me. Why can't he do that? Because he refuses to apologize for anything. Think about the position that puts him in. If you know you've made a mistake, but your pride won't let you admit it, you're stuck. You can't move forward, and you can't go back. You're frozen in this uncomfortable middle ground, trying to manage an increasingly difficult situation. And here's what makes it even more complicated. There are those who believe Harry fell deeply in love with Meghan for specific reasons. She reminded him of his mother, Diana. She seemed to understand him, to see him in a way others didn't. She looked into his eyes and made him feel special, made him feel like he was number one. But over time, the reality has apparently set in. The person he thought he was marrying may not be the person he's living with now. According to observers, Meghan is described as tough, very tough. She's good at presenting a certain image, good at smiling and appearing warm, but behind closed doors, it's a different story. And Harry, he's had what one source called a jolly bad time because she allegedly takes everything away from him. He's not allowed to be number one in anything. She pushes him out of the way. We've seen this pattern play out publicly for years now. The biographer noted something particularly painful. Harry doesn't know who he is anymore, how he's managing, or what he's supposed to be doing. You can see the unhappiness in his face, in his demeanor. This is a man who looks lost. And then there's the money issue we touched on earlier, but it goes deeper than just income and expenses. Meghan's spending habits are apparently extraordinary. There was a coat she wore recently that was worth $34,000. $34,000 for one coat. She's constantly seen in expensive jewelry, designer clothes, all the trappings of extreme wealth. She spends money, according to sources, like no one's business. But the money for the important things, the foundation of their life, that's running out. Harry inherited money from his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth. He inherited money from his mother, Diana. He's received financial support from various members of the royal family over the years. But here's the thing. Even if you have a few £1,000,000, when you're spending at the rate they apparently are, with a house that's too big, security costs that are astronomical, and a lifestyle that demands constant expensive maintenance, that money disappears fast. And Harry never learned to manage money properly. Why would he? He grew up royal. Aides handled everything. People bought his clothes, arranged his schedule, took care of the financial details. He never had to develop those skills. It wasn't him making those decisions, it was the support system around him. So when he left that system and went off with Meghan, he genuinely didn't know what to do. She certainly knew what to do with money, spend it, but managing it sustainably? That's proven to be a different challenge altogether. Sources say Harry wants to reach out to his father, King Charles, and get significant financial support. He feels entitled to it because he's the king's son. But here's reality. At 42 years old, most people are expected to manage their own finances. They're expected to have built a career, to be self-sufficient. The idea that a man in his 40s needs his father to bail him out financially is, quite frankly, embarrassing. But it gets worse when you look at how Harry continues to damage his own position. Take the recent situation with his statement about Donald Trump. Harry spoke out, making comments that were completely undiplomatic and frankly inappropriate for someone in his position. And this is after Trump made it clear he wasn't going to pursue deporting Harry, even though there are serious questions about whether Harry lied on his immigration documents about drug use. The Heritage Foundation certainly believes there's an issue there, but Trump gave him a pass. And how does Harry respond? By publicly criticizing him. The arrogance of it is stunning. Here's a man who should be lying low, being grateful for the chance to stay in America, and instead, he can't help himself. He has to speak out, has to make his voice heard, regardless of the consequences. And make no mistake, there are consequences. Every time Harry makes a statement like that, he puts the British royal family in a difficult position. They're trying to maintain diplomatic relationships, and here's Harry, technically still a prince, making politically charged statements. He's not a working royal anymore. He doesn't have the protection or the authorization to speak on behalf of the crown, but he still carries that title, and people still associate him with the royal family. Royal commentators have noted that Harry's behavior continues to prove why King Charles and Prince William are right to keep him at arm's length, why the question of stripping his titles keeps coming up, why he needs to remain in exile. He's a liability. Every time he opens his mouth on a political or controversial topic, he creates problems. And who's encouraging this behavior? According to sources, it's all to please Meghan. She didn't like Trump, so Harry's statement made her happy. It gave Harry a chance to feel powerful, to feel like he was standing up for something. But he's not powerful. He's weak. And these outbursts are attempts to prove otherwise, to himself and to her. One biographer described a scene that really captures the dynamic. Harry came back from a court appearance in the UK, a long, exhausting flight, and was almost immediately seen at an event, smiling and grinning. He's there to do what he's told, and that's what he does. He has to walk behind her at events, hold her hand when she indicates, respond to her gestures, a touch on the back, a pull on his jacket. He's very busy remembering what he's supposed to do, but it's not a life, it's not meaningful, it's just performance. There was one particular photograph that really stood out to observers. At an event, there was a woman who had organized everything, who had put together the entire program. When it came time for photos, this woman put her arm around Harry's back, but she wouldn't hold Meghan's hand or put her arm around her. The body language was clear. This woman didn't like Meghan, and apparently this kind of thing happens more often than you'd think. People in their circles see through the act. So where does this leave Harry? He knows he's made a mistake, but he can't admit it. He wants some kind of reconciliation with his family, some way to edge closer to the United Kingdom, but he won't take the steps necessary to make that happen. He won't apologize. He won't show genuine remorse for the damage he's caused, particularly through his book and the interviews where he attacked his family publicly. There's a desperate quality to his recent actions. The court cases against newspapers, the continued grievances, the inability to let go of past grudges, it all suggests someone who's stuck in a loop, unable to move forward. He wants to be part of the royal family again, or at least have access to the benefits that come with it, but he's not willing to do what would be required to make that happen. His biographer believes he's not stupid. He knows he's made a big mistake. He fell in love with someone who seemed to be one thing but turned out to be quite another. The sweet, understanding person who made him feel special has, according to these accounts, revealed herself to be as tough as old boots. Someone who's excellent at pretending, excellent at managing appearances and making money, but not the nice person he thought she would be. And now Harry is stuck. He's got 2 young children. He's in a marriage that appears to be more about control than partnership. He's isolated from his old friends and family. He has no clear purpose or income. And he's in a country where even his neighbors openly say they wish he'd leave. The prison that people talk about isn't literal. It's the cage he's built around himself through his choices. The separate offices are symbolic. They represent the reality that the partnership, at least professionally, isn't working. The joint ventures failed. The unified brand didn't resonate. And now they're trying to salvage what they can individually, but neither seems to be finding much success. For Harry specifically, the outlook is particularly bleak. He's banking on speaking engagements, but how long can that sustain them? What happens when people stop caring about what he has to say? What happens when the novelty of booking a prince for your event wears off? He's not building anything sustainable. He's not creating anything of lasting value. He's just trying to get by appearance, hoping something changes. The tragedy in all of this is that Harry had real value to offer the world. The Invictus Games prove that. When he focused on service, when he used his platform to help veterans and wounded warriors, he was genuinely making a difference. People respected that work. But instead of building on that, instead of creating a life of meaningful service in California California or anywhere else. He got caught up in celebrity culture, in making money, in settling scores with the media and his family. And Meghan? Whatever her intentions were at the beginning, the pattern that's emerged is one of someone who's very good at spending money, very good at getting attention, but not so good at maintaining relationships or building sustainable success. Her Netflix show ended quickly. The Spotify deal collapsed. Her various projects and initiatives haven't gained the traction she probably hoped for. And now, with separate offices from Harry, even the core partnership that brought them together professionally seems to be fracturing. What we're witnessing is the slow-motion collapse of what was supposed to be a fairy tale. The prince who married the American actress, who left the royal family to build a new life of freedom and purpose, it hasn't worked out that way. Instead, we have a man who rarely leaves his house, who's lost touch with his old friends, who's struggling financially despite millions in earnings, who's isolated and apparently controlled by the very person who was supposed to liberate him. The question now is, what happens next? Does Harry continue down this path until the money completely runs out? Does he eventually swallow his pride and try to rebuild bridges with his family? Does the marriage survive these mounting pressures? Or do we see yet another dramatic chapter unfold in this ongoing saga? One thing seems certain. The situation is unsustainable. You can't maintain a multi-million-dollar lifestyle indefinitely without multi-million-dollar income. You can't stay relevant in Hollywood without producing successful content. You can't build meaningful relationships while isolated in a mansion. And you can't find happiness living a life that seems to be dictated by someone else's demands and expectations. Harry wanted to escape being the spare, but he's ended up in a role that might be even worse. A kept man with no clear purpose, no real independence, and no obvious path forward. It's a cautionary tale about the importance of thinking through major life decisions, about understanding what you're giving up before you walk away from it, and about making sure the life you're running toward is actually better than the one you're leaving behind. So that's where we are. The latest revelations paint a picture of a man in crisis, a marriage under strain, and a future that looks increasingly uncertain. Whether this story ends in reconciliation, separation, financial collapse, or some other unexpected development remains to be seen. But right now, things are not looking good for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Before I go, make sure you're subscribed to this channel if you want to stay updated on all the latest developments in this story. Hit that like button, drop a comment letting me know what you think about all of this, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. This story is far from over, and you're going to want to be here when the next chapter unfolds. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.